Good evening, everybody. My name's Phil Smith. I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Frontline Gastroenterology, and I'm delighted to invite you all to All I Want for Christmas, the BSG Frontline Gastroenterology webinar. I'm afraid we don't have Mariah Carey with us tonight, but what we do have are many GI superstars, some very, very familiar to you in the field of gastroenterology, who are our associate editor team joining us tonight. These are my conflicts of interest declaration. So we've got lots in store for tonight, involving a number of different members of our editorial team. From left to right, I'll just introduce some of those to you. We've got Aditi Kumar from Wolverhampton. She's one of our deputy editors. Unfortunately, Aditi can't join us tonight, but has been integral to setting up this webinar. So we miss Dee. She's at a nativity play, which is crucial at this time of year. But we thank you very much for her help. We've also got Louise China, who's our lead associate editor for hepatology. Many of you will know Louise, as published in high impact journals such as the New England Journal of Medicine. We've got Beatriz from Spain, who's online. She's a superstar celebrity of social media and IBD. She's got a fantastic website, and we're delighted that she's joining us in person tonight. Then we've got Jonathan Segal, who many of you know in the centre, was UK trained and is now based in Australia, in Melbourne. He's joining and has recorded part of the session tonight with him, and we thank him for his time. Due to the time limitations, he's not unfortunately able to join us live at the moment. Then we've got Oliver Tavabie, who's a hepatologist in Leeds, done some fantastic work, especially with training networks. He's one of our deputy editors and has again been integral to the to setting up the webinar. We've also got Joyce Mack, who's a superstar gastroenterologist in Hong Kong, China. She's joined via a recorded message, and she's published in many high-impact journals across the globe. Many of you will be extremely familiar with Aline Charabaty, who's a social media superstar also, but also fantastically well published in IBD. And it's a great delight that she's part of our AE board. We've also got Dr. Keith Siau, who almost needs no introduction, given that he has so many followers on social media, and is an absolute legend, really, in medical education. So we're delighted he's delivering a talk tonight. And then finally, we've got Dr. Chris Black, who's our lead AE for neurogastroenterology. Chris has won many international and national prizes, as well as published in many high-impact journals. And so we're delighted he's joining in person tonight also. This is what we're covering tonight. I'm going to briefly give you an introduction to Frontline Gastroenterology in a second. And then we've got Oliver delivering a talk about how to really get a good publication, or what makes a good publication, such as clear messaging, having a novel subject matter, producing good figures, having good authorship with no major conflicts of interest. Obviously, showing a likelihood of citation is always good in terms of what makes a good publication, also something that might increase the alt metrics, and also hot topics, but Oliver will cover that in greater detail. Then we've got Keith Siau talking about what makes a relevant review, and we're talking about peer review in particular because we want many of you to become peer reviewers for Frontline Gastroenterology. This is a difficult area for all journals to recruit in, peer review, and we're hoping that by giving some education about what makes a good peer review, we can entice you to supporting Frontline Gastroenterology and, of course, other journals. And then finally, we're going to talk about what makes an impactful publication, and the associate editors that I've already described below are experts in this area, and will be able to give you some really detailed insights. We'll hopefully have time for a Q&A session at the end. So hopefully many of you will be familiar with Frontline Gastroenterology already. It's the sister journal to Gut and BMJ Open Gastroenterology. It's part owned by the BMJ Group and also by the BSG, who's kindly supporting and putting on this webinar tonight with us. Many of you will already know that it publishes our articles in the adoption of innovative and best practice in gastroenterology, hepatology and clinical nutrition. But it does more than that, really. It covers all the different subspecialty areas of gastroenterology. And this is now the more expansive areas that we publish in Frontline Gastroenterology. So IBD, nutrition, intestinal failure, HPB, hepatology, pediatric GI and liver, given we're affiliated to BSG, which is the Pediatric Gastroenterology Society, endoscopy, esophagus and duodenal section. AI is a brand new section of ours, as is neurogastroenterology and colorectal surgery. And finally, radiology. Education is a key area for us as well. So any articles related to education are important to us. I should have mentioned also that we are affiliated to BAPEN, which is the Nutrition Society in the UK also. We publish in many different areas and many different article types. The main ones are original research and also review articles, but we do have other areas such as an images section. We're now introducing video articles in the next few months. We do very occasionally publish case reports, although increasingly less so. We do guideline reviews, and also we do commentaries. People can submit letters and so on. All of those details are on the FG website. When you do submit this paper, I'm giving you a very brief overview of the simplified publishing pathway. I know Keith is going to go in much greater detail than this. Your paper will be submitted and then assessed by me. And then at that stage, it could be accepted or rejected potentially. If potentially it's publishable, we feel it's publishable, it's then assigned to reviewers. It then undergoes peer review, and then those review comments are returned to the author. At that point, a paper can undergo acceptance or rejection at that point as well. Each author gets a chance to respond to the peer review in turn. And then that peer review that has been given by the authors, the response to that is reviewed again by the reviewers and editors, and then the paper will generally be accepted or rejected after that. But at any time, a paper can be accepted or rejected, as you can see from that diagram. That's a very simplified publishing pathway, and there may be more iterations of this pathway according to each paper. What we do know is that we need your help in publishing, and we want you to join the Frontline Gastroenterology peer review team. If you use this QR code, which I'll show a number of times during this evening, if you use this, you'll be able to sign up for becoming a peer reviewer, and you'll be able to indicate the areas that you'd be interested in helping with peer review. So please do use that, and please do join our team. We're very, very grateful for your help. There is a lot more to Frontline Gastroenterology than meets the eye. We're not just a UK journal, we're an international journal. We're reaching further and further across the globe. We hope to be able to accept papers from across the globe, and that's really important to us. We've got a strong presence on social media, on X, formerly Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and hopefully Instagram in the near future. We support training networks, and that's a crucial area for us to support the future generation of gastroenterologists. We do regular podcasts that you should listen to online via the homepage of FG. We do blogs. We've got the FG Cup and choosing some of the best papers from Frontline in the last 12 months. That's coming up very soon. And we do run special issues. In addition, we've got a great trainee editorial team. We've got Philip, Vivek, Rex, James and Gio at the bottom there are all crucial members of our team and do a lot of great work for the journal. Finally, we're human beings like everybody else, or at least we hope so, and we know how important this time of year is. We've actually just commissioned and just published a great fun paper on how pandas in China are actually looked after by gastroenterologists. A significant number of pandas get GI disease and symptoms, and in fact, the endoscopy equipment we use on humans is used in pandas as well. So please do read that paper. It'll be live on the FG website very soon. So I'm going to finish there and hand over in a second to Oliver Tavabie, who's a consultant hepatologist in Leeds. He's also, I'm delighted to say, our fantastic deputy editor of Frontline Gastroenterology, along with Aditi Kumar, and he's going to talk through All I Want for Christmas is a publication, The Author's Wish. If you do have any comments or questions, do add those into the chat box, which will be on the right-hand side, and we will address these towards the webinar. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll hand you over to Oliver. Oliver, thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. That's a very kind introduction. So I've been tasked, oh, there we go, let me get my slides back up. Been tasked with talking to you about getting a publication for Christmas. These are my conflicts of interest. So everyone's been there looking for your first paper to publish, and it can come across as quite an intimidating journey, a mountain to climb with monsters hidden all the way. But hopefully through discussing a bit of what we're looking at tonight through this webinar, we'll hopefully demystify this and make it seem less intimidating. The first question you should think about when you've got your piece of work or you're planning your piece of work, if it's a review article, is this the right journal for me to submit to? So if you've got your high-end lab work, you'll probably be looking at Nature to be sending your work if you're lucky. And if you're running your clinical trial, again, maybe you'll be thinking of the New England Journal of Medicine. What are we looking at? So Phil's given a good overview of the topics and things that we are interested in frontline and gastroenterology. And to simplify it even further, it is anything that influences how we practice medicine for our patients in all the different roles that are.
Oliver, you seem to have disappeared. Your video has disappeared and your audio has disappeared. I'm hoping that Oliver will be able to rejoin us in a second. This is a live event, so.
Sorry, I'm back. Can you hear me? Now?
I can. I was just explaining to our audience, this is a live event, as you can see. So I think it was on the slide before we lost you, Oliver.
Apologies. Okay, so I'll briefly go back again. I'm sorry about that. I'm not quite sure what happened. Phil has given a good overview of what we are interested in as a journal, but to simplify it even further, we are interested in any topic that impacts the way we practice gastroenterology, hepatology, nutrition from any of healthcare roles which are involved in gastroenterology that can help make both our patients and our lives more easy or better, for want of a better word. And looking at stuff that we've published recently, we've published surveys looking at promoting gastroenterology to trainees. We've looked at a great study looking at the lived experiences of people with HCC. We've got review articles on pouchitis, and then looking at enteral nutrition and Crohn's disease. So it's a real varied bunch of things we publish, and that's what I keep in. Anything that could make our patients' lives or the way we practice medicine better is what we're interested in from a clinical perspective. So the journey which we're going to look at from the other side in a bit, particularly in Keys Talk, starts with, after your submission, is getting past the editor. And the first thing to talk about is the cover letter. Now, the way I see a cover letter, it's your elevator pitch. How can you summarize a paper to the critical elements, the things that why we should publish it? Why would the readership of Frontline Gastroenterology be interested in this paper? To just give the editor, get them excited about the potential impact of this work. And the critical thing is keep it short. Phil is a busy guy. He gets lots of submissions. Like, if you can keep it to the point, you'll make a bigger impact. Other issues which will be flagged up, particularly by the editor, is mistakes. Like, if you have a look at the website, make sure you submit the paper as requested. And the BMJ have got some pretty easy to follow guidance in how they want papers submitted. And with this as well, like any silly spelling mistakes which are obvious, just make sure that you have someone and your team go over this repeatedly to make sure that you don't do any of these things to just cause yourself problems to start off with. Then to the things which again stand out significantly, Phil has talked about how we're supporting all elements of the workforce from gastroenterology. But if you can integrate it, make it multidisciplinary, again, you'll have a greater impact because you're showing the entire facets of the disease and how to make things better. And as Phil says, we don't typically publish many case reports, but why can't your case report be the focus of a review article discussing the topic? Elevate the work by make it have more impact by using it to the maximum. Then the final things for the editor perspective now is we need to be able to get attention to the work. Phil has mentioned Outmetric already. We know that Outmetric, which is the number of times a paper is mentioned online, is associated positively with citations. Frontline have recently launched our visual abstracts, and this again will hopefully get our papers more attention. So if you focus on having attractive figures, these again will get your work more attention and again get in the editor's favour. The next is getting past review. Now, Keith is going to probably talk about this in a lot more detail from the other side. And this has historically been seen as a sort of adversarial duel of wits to try and get your paper into the journal. I would hasten to say that is completely the incorrect approach to this. The reviewer's job is to help point out flaws, but help you address them and give you suggestions on how you can make the paper better. I have to say, from all the papers I've submitted, it is very rare that I've had a reviewer comment that has been unhelpful. It has either highlighted something I have not thought about, which I'm always welcome for, or it has highlighted to me that I have not explained something the way I thought I had, and I had to go back and revise what I'd written. So work with them. Don't get worried about what the reviewer is going to say. And actually, it's a rewarding experience going through this to try and improve your paper. Now, some of the questions that you may be, that maybe you can anticipate the reviewer asking, and it should help you formulate how you first design your study if you're going to do it, and then also help you write it up. Are the things which I've listed here, which is what I think about a lot when I'm looking at papers from the review perspective. Is the question important? Now, the best questions from our Frontline perspective are those that impact us on our day-to-day basis. So, for example, managing patients with decompensated cirrhosis is important. Now, it doesn't mean rarer things aren't important, because we all need to know about the rarer things, but it is how you then sell it to tell the story that needs to be sold. Is the methodology sound? Is the analysis undertaken appropriate? Again, at the beginning of your career, this is challenging. And I would stress the next slide, which I'm going to come on, that it is critical that you get mentorship to help you get through and design and get through your first studies. Next, how do you interpret results to the general population? It's very similar to the first question, to try and sell the story a little bit more. And then, does your introduction and discussion contextualize the story and the findings appropriately, that we can understand why work is important and why it will impact on how we practice? And as stated, like, no one starts off being able to design studies that are going to get into any journal. You need help with this. Now, hopefully, a lot of you will have local help with consultant mentors and senior trainees, but there are other options to this, and the BSG do run a mentoring scheme, and I would recommend you have a look up. They're mentoring for not just for research, but lots of different aspects of things in your career pathway, but that research is one thing that potentially they can help out with. So general advice from my perspective, which are tricks you can be ethically sound. For example, if you're planning a case report, make sure the patient consents, and we have BMJ forms available for this. When you're looking at your site, your design, and we do take audits and such like that, particularly if they impact practice. Could you do this over several sites? This aids the generalizability of the results. And again, ensure that you have sufficient statistical support. And I see this frequently, that doing more analysis is not always better. In fact, it can make your paper far worse than doing less, as long as it's answering the question that you're trying to take. And then make sure you can textualize the work in your manuscript without overselling it. And I think always we think our work is amazing, but it's sometimes just having a step back and looking at it and understanding the limitations. And again, follow the submission guidelines and make sure you don't make silly mistakes in your spelling and grammar. So just to sum up then, submitting a manuscript is not as daunting as it seems. Do pick the right journal. And if you've got clinical work which will impact practice, please send it to Frontline Gastroenterology. And in your cover letter, tell us why it's important. I couldn't stress the importance more of having mentorship from start to finish of any project, and work with the reviewers to improve your manuscript. And thank you for listening. And I look forward to the chat later on. And apologies for my technical malfunction.
Thank you very much, Oliver. That was a tour de force, so thank you so much. It was nice to hear you repeat quite a few key messages. So I completely agree with you that the peer review process, which I know Keith's going to go through, we don't want to be adversarial at all, and we want it to be supportive, helpful, and improve the paper. And that's really important to me as an editor-in-chief, that people know that. We'll always be fair and transparent with our reviews. So do submit your paper through. It was also nice, I thought, how you went through the sort of papers that really grabbed the attention. I think you mentioned decompensated cirrhosis. We had a 3-part series of review articles last year, and that they were hugely informative and successful. I mean, are there any particular things that stood out, do you think, in that series that people could look at, or that you think people could learn when submitting papers, basically, as an author?
I think that was a very well put together thing, and it was driven by the BSG liver section. And I think it was there are certain things which I think a lot of people could learn about how to go through a process like that. But so the representation, firstly, in the authorship was pan UK, it was pan healthcare professional, and you could feel it in how it was written. It was written not from an ivory tower. It was written in a very practical set of recommendations that could be implemented by any healthcare professional managing these patients. And it was, the language used was accessible, and the recommendations were simple and straightforward and evidence-based. I think it's hard pushed to find a better series of papers out there which give you a framework, which particularly Frontline, we have a massive trainee readership from a perspective of a junior healthcare professional. This gives you a framework on how to manage these patients in an inpatient setting and an outpatient setting. It is divided and explained in such a way. So yeah, I agree with you. It was a great piece of work, and it is really useful for day-to-day practice.
Yeah, and not just in the UK, but globally, of course, yes, as well. And I also I just wanted to pick up on what a point you just made about it being part of a wider multidisciplinary team. We're lucky with FG. We've got a fantastic and brand new associate editor, Heidi, who's our first non-medical associate editor on the journal. So we're very open and receptive to submissions and authors submitting that aren't medical, that may be from allied healthcare environment. So please do think about Frontline Gastroenterology for that as well. Great. Okay, well, thank you very much, Oliver. I can't see any questions so far coming in, but I know I know that people may warm up as time goes on. If you've got any questions, do put them in the chat. Oliver will be back again a bit later in the last session to answer any questions. So thank you very much once again, Oliver. And we'll move on, I think, now to a man that needs very little introduction, Dr. Keith Siau, who's now based down in Cornwall in the UK. But many of you will be extremely familiar with Keith's fantastic work on social media, particularly X, but also his fantastic publications, particularly in the endoscopy sphere. Thank you very much, Keith, for joining us, and tell us how to do a good review.
Thank you for the very kind introduction, Phil, and for having me on your team. Coming from someone who was on the other side until not so recently, being an author, I'm now really privileged to be on the editorial side, doing reviews, but also selecting reviewers so that we get the best quality content for Frontline. So today I'm going to be talking about getting a good relevant review and what's on my wish list this Christmas. My conflicts of interest are as below. I work for other journals as well. So let's not be around the bush. Peer review is really hard. And as a reviewer, it's often a real dilemma to know whether to accept a paper, offer the chance for revisions, or to reject a paper. And the decision making behind this can be a huge dilemma. And this is because we know that reading the papers, you can tell the blood and sweat that people have put into behind the scenes. Sometimes these papers may have been years in the making, but because of critical flaws or issues with the papers, they may not be suitable for the journal. And therefore, your role is to give it a fair trial and to give constructive comments to make it better and be civil, polite, etc. But it's often a hard process. For editors, we often have reviewers who give conflicting recommendations. And it can be an impossible task. The critical thing is that the overall fate lies with the editor in chief. So if I don't know what to do when reviewers have disparate comments, I give it to Phil, or I give a recommendation to the boss who make a final decision. So please remember that the bottom line is not the recommendation that you come up with, but the substance of your peer review, what you think are the pros and cons, so that can help us with the decision making. As a reviewer, you don't only have a duty of care to the journal, to the readership in terms of the value that the paper adds, not only to the editors, because we have asked for a favor in asking for your review, but also to the authors in giving it a unbiased, professional, scientific assessment, and to improve the content of their work. And today I hope to go through how to do this step by step. As an author, my priority was to get my paper published. I know that submitting a paper can be challenging, can be time consuming, and we often leave it in the fate of editors. But reviewers have a slightly different priority or mindset. Reviewer 2 has classically been famous for offering a lot of recommendations, a 20-point to-do list. But what do they really look for? I guess a good reviewer looks for novelty. They can look behind the scenes of the paper and appraise value that a paper adds. It doesn't have to be the first of its kind. And for Frontline, we're not looking for groundbreaking first ever reports or first ever studies. We think that this is probably not going to be possible, or most questions will have been answered to a degree. We are looking for things that will add to what we know. It will add to the educational content of what is already out there. They will improve quality of care in some way. A good reviewer looks for validity, i.e., are the conclusions reliably drawn from what is in front of us? And this is subject to layers and layers of scrutiny, and there are checklists out there so that things are done robustly and correctly. And it is up to the reviewer to look behind the scenes for microscopic levels of detail, sources of bias that may have been overlooked, that could jeopardize the conclusions of a paper. We want clarity, minimal words, highest impact. We want research integrity. We want to make sure that the journal is publishing things of the highest standards, and then if there's something fishy going on, you raise it. We want high impact, title, abstract, figures. Most people, if you're on social media, this is what you'll read. These are really important areas that either capture your attention or lose attention. The journal has a slightly different priority in terms of editors and from Phil's side. Phil is obviously keen to look at impact, novelty of the work. Can a paper that has been published by Frontline be cited to preserve its impact factor? And this may account for why one paper may go to a high impact factor journal and not another. And as a reviewer, you may also tweak the bar of how you award an outcome of the paper, depending on the impact factor or the journal itself. There are space restrictions, and therefore we have to pick work over another. We have to look at reviewers' comments, the scope and the relevance of the submission. We have to protect our reputation of the journal. We have a social responsibility. So these all come in as a complex algorithm that AI will not be able to fathom as to whether papers should be accepted. So reviewing is really hard. So what is a peer review? Peer review is a process to which external experts, i.e. you guys, are invited to scrutinize research material. We are specifically looking for advice on quality, validity, and whether you think it is suitable for publication. When you have been invited, there is sometimes, for instance, from my side, when I was first invited to review a paper, there was a great sense of imposter syndrome. Phil, did you really mean to invite me to review a paper as a lowly registrar? But we know that, rest assured, that if we are inviting you to review a paper, we think that you're an expert. We do not need microscopic level detail or publications in New England Journal for you to think that you're an expert. We think that you have what it takes. Phil has gone through the peer review process, so I won't go into that again. But essentially, if you have been offered the opportunity to review a paper, Phil has already screened it. It will have been screened by an editor-in-chief who feels that there is potential. So give it a fair hearing. So what is a good review? This is an excerpt I have copied and pasted from a paper I did with Imad El Omar and Anand Kulkarni. And we defined it as an unbiased, factual, and comprehensive report that understands the submitted work, can put it in context as to what is already known. It provides expertise to authors. It articulates the pros and cons respectfully to assist editorial decision-making. It should improve the quality of the work by addressing integrity, validity, and impact, even if the work is not accepted. A good review should be succinct and structured. It should be able to see potential. It should be courteous and professional, and it should be timely. The able to see potential is really important because sometimes I see papers littered with grammatical spelling errors, but if the substance is there, I will give it a fair hearing. I know that if I were to write a randomized trial in Spanish, it would probably look not right. Therefore, I think we should look beyond linguistic errors and see potential behind a paper, because you can make a real impact in adding value to it. So how do we rate the quality of a review? So Phil sent me this scorecard, which is what most manuscript central journals rate a review. They rate it on two things, and I don't quite agree with this, but this is how this reviews are formally rated. And this is based on timeliness and quality. So you can tell that just by getting it in on time, meeting deadlines, this takes up 50% of the scoring that makes up a high quality review. So not sure if that's right. And 50% for the quality of your review. So timeliness is key. The first thing you have to think is when to say yes to reviewing. So to review a paper, this needs to be within your area of expertise. I would not review a paper on molecular science, laboratory science, that is completely out of my area. So pick things that are within your expertise, that you know something about. It's even better if you are mentoring a fellow who you can ask to review and oversee, so that you both gain in the peer review process. And this is something that we would support as long as they are credited with their efforts in the review. You have to be neutral. I was asked recently to review a paper for someone I was having drinks with on a monthly basis. I had to turn it down because there was a clear conflict of interest. And also you have to have time. You have to have time, mental space, breathing space. It takes about 4 hours to write a really, really good review, to go through the literature, to look in depth behind the lines, to understand it fully, so that you know exactly how the authors have conducted their study. These are the principles of peer review. Be courteous and constructive. This is from the BMJ website that's below. Present your report and recommendation, and then we decide what to do. So don't feel like you are giving the fate of the manuscript. But your main aim is to improve the manuscript. Maintain confidentiality. Declare any competing interests. Be timely and have empathy. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. So this circle is how to review a scientific paper in 10 steps. Understand the role, the remit. Familiarize yourself with the literature. Look at the structure of it. Feel how heavy it weighs. Think about it. Come back to it. Look at the research methods in detail. Look at the results. Look at the discussions and conclusions. Think about the ethics. Look at the references. Are they up to date? And then you write your feedback and summarize. I have a slightly different approach. I look at a paper in the form of impact, validity, integrity. In terms of impact, is this important? Is it of interest to the readers, to the readership? Are things presented in the clearest and most effective way possible in the form of data visualization, data presentation, results section? The validity, are the methods appropriate? Can the methods draw these results and conclusions? Is this generalizable to a broader audience, to somewhere to an international setting, for instance? Are the numbers big enough? Integrity. Have they followed research methods, reporting checklists? Are there ethical concerns? Is there potential for harm if this paper is published? So this is what a paper looks like. A paper has an anatomy of different sections. All original studies will have these sections. Which are most important? I think the title, the abstract, and the figures, and also going back to specific areas of the methods. The aims are usually buried in the introduction. So find out why. What do the authors aim to do? How do they address it? What do they find? So these are the high impact areas. The title, number 1. And please feel free to make recommendations if you think these could be improved. The title unveils the existence of a paper, and it's so important to get right. If you can't get the title right, it won't be found on search engines. You have a real chance to optimize it so that it is findable. People can actually see it. The abstract is what most people read, especially if the paper is behind a paywall. Ensure that everything in the abstract is clear. And if the abstract doesn't sell it, then it probably isn't going to garner much attention. Look at the figures. These are selling points. These are what we use and pin on social media. Think about suggesting a visual abstract, which enhances readability, altmetrics, citations. Look at the tables, which is another form of data visualization. Suggest ways of increasing clarity to these high impact areas. The introduction should include what's already known, what's not known, what the study is looking to add, and the aim. The methods, look at the study design, what primary, secondary outcomes are there, and the analyses. Are the methods actually valid for answering the question? Is it appropriately powered? Is there a study protocol? Is it generalizable? Is it reproducible? What is the level of evidence generated by this study? And then the results section should be very clearly presented in the form of primary outcomes, secondary outcomes, and relate to the figures and the tables. This is the summative outcome of a peer review. You have a recommendation. Most papers culminate in either a major revision or reject. I don't know the rejection rate of Frontline Gastroenterology, but for most journals, it's around the 75% mark, 50 to 75, or perhaps even more for BMJ, for instance. You have an opportunity to write comments to the editor and to the authors. This is how I recommend structuring your review to the editors and to the authors. What I tend to do is start with the comments to the authors. Start with a short 1-paragraph summary of your study. What do you think are the major concerns in the form of the high impact areas, the methodology, the validity? Prioritize your comments. Number 1, this is the greatest, most noticeable issue that will back up your overall decision at the end. Avoid being negative or producing blunt comments. Be polite and constructive. To the editors, give your overall impression, how you think it adds to the current literature and practice, what it adds in terms of novelty, whether you think what you think is the overall validity of this paper, and whether the conclusions are supported by the methods, and what your overall recommendation is and why. There is an optional recommendation, including whether the manuscript could benefit from an editorial, graphical abstract, professional assistance with data visualization, social media promotion, etc. These are things that you could suggest to the editor. So a good reviewer has the ability to benefit multiple stakeholders. For authors, a good reviewer should review with honor, provide structured feedback, have time for review, see potential, and bring added value. For the editors, a good reviewer gets things in on time, communicates decisions well, and can make tough decisions that are supported by articulated reasoning. They can see behind the scenes and raise concerns over integrity or validity and suggest editorial considerations. For the journal, a good reviewer looks at or recognizes the journal's scope and guidelines. A good reviewer will improve the impact of the paper within the journal, will uphold reputation, will maintain confidentiality, not spin it or submit it to AI and give the comments to the journal. They'll do it properly. To the readers, they will defend integrity and accuracy of research, add value, minimize confusion or misinformation, especially to international readers where English might not be their first language. They have a role of improving readability as well, simplifying key messages and getting data out there effectively, quickly, because nobody has time. So this is my Christmas wish list. Be timely with the invitation and report, but don't rush things. Structure your review. Be constructive and aim to improve quality. Try and be kind and positive, even if you're rejecting the paper. Remember the high impact areas and focus on them. If you want to delve deeper, don't forget the supplementary file. Don't forget to read the cover letter that Oliver has mentioned. If in doubt, ask. For instance, statistics. If it's outside your depth and you don't understand it, mention it, declare it openly. If you're in a dilemma with the decision, follow your gut and tell us that this is a dilemma. Tell us that this is difficult for you. Be honest with us. Check out your fellow reviewers' report when you get them. Each paper is reviewed by 2.2 reviewers on average, and we have a lot to learn from how other people write their reviews, and I have learned so much from them. If a paper has gone for revision and we think that they merit a revision and authors submit the revision, we would invite you again for you to look at the paper. Please accept it, because this is so much more efficient for the authors. And you get to see how the authors have amended their manuscript in response to your comments. So this is my wish list here. I have to say that reviewing is unpaid. It requires expertise from people's time. And sometimes it can feel like a thankless task. And I'm always so honored and grateful when reviewers step up and submit their opinion in a benevolent way to help academia. So thank you. And Frontline recognizes the assistance that reviewers are made for the journal. And every year they publish a list of people who have helped with reviews. So thank you so much for adding to academia, helping our journal, helping us as authors as well, and improving our papers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keith. That was a beautiful presentation, and I'm absolutely delighted that we're recording that. If people weren't able to join tonight or people want to watch that again, there's a lot of learning there for absolutely everybody. And I do want to reiterate your last two slides, how much we are grateful and thankful to authors and reviewers. And of course, I'm very grateful to my associate editor team for the hard work that people put in for Frontline Gastroenterology. We're fairly short on time, but I wanted to mention the word time just because you had mentioned it a number of times. And I think I should mention it. Time is our most important commodity for everybody in a variety of different ways. And I want to say to all our authors, but anybody that's volunteering as a peer reviewer, that we will always respect your time. If you're not able to review a paper, that's fine. We're thankful for you considering it. If you're not able, just let us know. And then, of course, we can allocate to somebody else. So that's the first thing. The second thing, to authors, we want to respect how much hard work and effort you put into your paper. So we're going to push and try our hardest as an editorial board to get papers seen, reviewed as quickly as we can. And that's one of my biggest goals and aims as a fairly new editor-in-chief, to try and get time to decision down as much as we can. So we respect everybody's time. Keith, thank you again. That was amazing. I know you're going to stay online with us a bit longer and join us for the last session. So thank you so much again. So we're going to move on now to our last session in a moment. But before I do that, I just wanted to reiterate really that we do want you all to join our peer review team. And if you use this QR code, if you're able to, that will take you to a link where you can volunteer for whatever subspecialty area of gastroenterology you're keen on being a peer reviewer for. As Keith has said, we're hugely grateful for any time and effort for doing this. So thank you in advance, but do consider joining our peer review team. We're hugely grateful for you. So we're now going to move on to the last session of this webinar. All I Want for Christmas is an impactful publication. And we've got our AE team here to discuss that with, really to get advice from them as Frontline Gastroenterology Associate Editors on publishing. All of the people here, as well as the people you've already heard from, are very well published and experts at publishing and reviewing publications. And so it's great to get insights from them. And I've asked them, or I'm going to ask them each in turn, a question initially. And then at the end of that, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end. So do put your questions in the chat at the end. Otherwise, we will try and fill it with any things that we've missed during this webinar. The first 3 questions are pre-recorded because I think in Melbourne it's quite early in the morning, and John Segal isn't able to join us live, so he's going to go first, and we'll listen to John's video now if we can. So thank you very much, John, for this and answering this question for us. We're talking about impactful publications and getting advice from our associate editors. And a question that comes up not infrequently from authors and readers is what is the right thing to publish on? Essentially, what is hot and what is not, if you kind of pardon that phrase. And I wondered if you could give some insights into how you approach this when you're publishing particularly.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Really great question. And look, I may have a different approach to this to some, but I think what is hot is what is important and interesting to you. And I think research is driven by things that you're interested in, and those passions come through when you're writing things and something that you're interested in. I've often found that when there are hot topics in certain fields, there are loads of other researchers around the world who are looking at that same thing. So your work may not be unique if you are following necessarily just what's hot. So my advice really is to find something that you're passionate in. And quite often that is from your own clinical experience. What is really important unknown question that you have? What is the unknowns in your field, and what do you want to study? And that's always kind of been the way I've approached things. If there are some burning questions or things that really are big in the field, you tend to find them at conferences that keep coming up, the same kind of topics. And if you really do want to go down that avenue, then those kind of avenues to explore the conferences, to go through what's coming in other journals, often will guide you to what's hot. But I think my bottom line is find what you're passionate in, find what you really enjoy, and go for that. And if you do that more than often, that work will shine through, and it will be something unique, novel, and interesting, hopefully.
Yeah, and can I just push you a little bit further? So, what used to be the case years ago, and obviously we've got social media, we've got you know, the internet where you can get your answer in seconds. Do you kind of trawl through the literature about, see, on a daily basis about what's coming out, and then think, oh, you know, this seems like it's really kind of pushing forward? Or do you see something on X or, you know, Facebook or whatever platform it is? Do you use that as an inspiration ever?
Yeah, I quite often do, Phil. I think there are things that often come through social media. You think, oh, that's really interesting, but perhaps this part of the angle hasn't been looked at. So I think whenever you're seeing what is coming through different avenues, journals, social media, whatever it is, I think there's always got to be some kind of unique angle that you're offering something different that helps you get published. If you are just doing a Me Too type study, quite often that's uninspiring for editors and journals that have seen the same kind of thing over and over again. So I think when you do see things, or when I do see things on social media, I do try and think, well, how can I make an angle slightly different? How can I answer a question slightly differently? And has there been something within this thing that's been advertised that perhaps is unknown and that I can add to?
Yeah, and very final add-on question, John, if you don't mind. You've reviewed lots and published lots actually for Frontline Gastroenterology. I wondered whether you've ever got inspiration from FG in terms of when you've been reviewing a paper for, you know, things that you've then gone on to publish and do and work on.
Oh, absolutely, Phil. I think that's a really important thing, and something I've really enjoyed as a reviewer is you are one of the first people to see this novel piece of work in its raw form before it's been edited and formatted, perhaps. And by doing that, often the actual authors of the paper have suggested things that may need further research, or you come up with things that perhaps they haven't thought of. You think, oh, that might be a good different thing to look at. So I do get a lot of inspiration from reviewing papers, and something that if you can get involved in, I think is really good to develop your ideas, develop your critical thinking, and really to develop being able to publish and knowing what editors are looking for. Because when they send it out for review, that tends to mean that is something that potentially could be of interest to the journal. And therefore, you can kind of start getting ideas about what might be attractive to a journal and editors alike. All
right, well, thank you very much, John. Appreciate that. And hello from everybody in the UK to you in Melbourne. It's good to see you.
Thank you, Phil. Thanks for your time.
So that's John Segal, who will be familiar to many of you. So thank you, John, from the UK to Melbourne. So next up is Joyce Mack, who's one of our associate editors based in Hong Kong in China. So we'll get Joyce's video up now and her question. Hi, Joyce. Thanks again for joining us from Hong Kong. You're one of our many excellent international editors. So I wanted to ask you, who's published a lot of research and work over the years, about targeting or focusing your research, really. So we know that publishing in gastroenterology and hepatology is exciting, and there's many things to study and write about and research. But I wanted to ask you this, obviously knowing that you live in Hong Kong. Are there any topics that you think resonate more in certain areas of the world than others? Or do you not really worry about that and just approach publishing in a global sense, i.e., what will be clinically useful in China, in Hong Kong, in the USA, will be good clinically in the UK?
Yeah, thanks, Leo. I think I totally agree with you. Like, absolutely, publishing in gastro and also hepatology study is indeed a thrilling endeavor, especially given the diversity of topics and also a lot of ongoing research. However, I do agree to some extent that like some of the geographical factors can influence what's resonate in different regions. So, for example, the epidemiology of different diseases is different in different regions. So, for example, hepatitis B is a major public health concern in Asia, particularly in China and in Hong Kong. However, the research focusing on the local antiviral treatment or the vaccination strategy can have a profound impact in this region. In contrast, in the UK or in the USA or in the other parts of the world, hepatitis C have been more prevalent historically, and therefore the study on DAA may resonate more strongly in those areas. However, the guideline and the treatment for hepatitis C from the Western world can also provide us insights into the Asian countries on the management and also the elimination of hepatitis C. And besides, the cultural and the dietary influence also plays a crucial role. For example, in Asia, there is a higher incidence of gastric cancer, which is associated with a high intake of salt preserved food. And conversely, studies on fatty liver disease may resonate more in the Western country previously, where they have more lifestyle-related conditions. However, with like there's a lot of talking about like globalization and urbanization. Now, the fatty liver disease is now become more and more common in Asia, and therefore, research in both the East and the West can enhance our knowledge exchange and to understand the difference in the disease pattern and pathogenesis. And furthermore, and I think the health there's quite a lot of difference in terms of healthcare system in both the East and the West. For example, the approach to managing IBD can vary quite significantly between the East and the West due to healthcare resources and also the access to the advanced therapy like biologics. And therefore, it is essential for us to recognize that while certain topics may have some universal clinical relevance, the context in which they are applied can vary in different regions. For example, the clinical guidelines developed in UK may not be directly applicable in the low resource setting region, because there are different challenges that we are facing. And so as such, what we can approach with publishing with a global mindset, we should tailor our research to address the local healthcare challenges so as to enhance its relevance and impact. And so I think in short, while some topic in GI and also hepatology may have a universal appeal, it is vital for us to consider the local health concern, the cultural context, and the healthcare infrastructure. We should have a balanced approach that values both the global perspective and the local preference. This will help us to create impactful, innovative, and also relevant research across different regions. That's my thinking, yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Joyce. And whilst I've got you here, I just want to say thank you and how much I appreciate you and your colleagues in Hong Kong and China for engaging with Frontline Gastroenterology. It's really kind of you, and I wish you a happy festive season ahead. So thank you very much for answering my question. So thank you to Joyce there. And now we're going to move on to something very familiar to many of you, Aline Charabaty from the USA. I spoke to her a few weeks ago. I'll get her video on now. So thank you for your answers. So we're now moving on to Aline to ask a question about assessing the real impact of work and how to reach different audiences. So Aline, how do you reach audiences with the contents of publications successfully and make a real impact? And what I'm really trying to get at is clearly you're extremely well known for many different things, but your Monday night IBD forum and the use of social media has been fantastic and leading globally, really, and certainly in IBD. Could you describe how to do that, to approach that?
Yeah, I think the biggest draw of Frontier Gastro article is that it speaks directly to the general gastroenterologist and to the subspecialists who are looking for practical guidance on how to approach a particular problem, diagnosis, clinical situation. So as an author, you know, you did the work, you published in a great journal, you should be absolutely confident that you do need to share this manuscript with others to amplify your reach, because the whole goal of this is not just to have another check mark on your resume that you publish, but it's really to create an impact and to help fellow clinicians in the care of their patient. So when you have published a manuscript, of course, you can share it with your colleagues, your mentees, your trainees, your institution, the media section in your institution, and that's always wonderful. But if you do want to have a wider reach, this is really where social media comes into play, because your reach then is the entire world. When we look into who publish and who interact on social media in the GI field, we see that many are gastroenterologists, most in North America and in Europe, but also other places in the world. And you also have GI organization and national society and journals that are watching and interacting with the people contributing to the platform. And the impact is real. It goes beyond having your article liked or reshared. In real life, when we look at the impact of posting or promoting your article on social media, we see that the citation of that article comes on top over the next 5 years, whether this article was published in an open journal or not in Europe or in a US-based journal. Once you put out your manuscript on a social media platform, the citation of that manuscript is going to be increased in the next 5 years. So how do you post? I think it should go with your personality and the type of social media platform that you like to use. You can always, when you post about your article, post a link, tag the journal, tag a few colleagues that you know might be interested in the topic or that you know will help you amplify your post. Use a graphic that summarizes maybe the key point of your article. That's always helpful. People like to learn either by reading or by seeing a visual. And the way you post, it can be very short, almost like I think of it as a movie trailer, right? You put in few words and you get people excited to click on the link of the article. I remember a few years ago, we published in Frontier Gastro, an article about how to manage a Crohn's stricture. When do you use medical therapy, endoscopy, or surgery? So that's a nice kind of a teaser, allowing people to be, I want to learn more, let me click on that article. Or you can be more complete. You can put in a summary of the key point of your article, or go even further. If you're publishing research that has different stages and you want to have a complete thread on that manuscript, you can do this on Twitter, for example, like a tutorial, or on other platform, you can have a short video reviewing the main key point of your article. So there's different ways of engaging with others. And that's the key word. You don't want to just put it out there to amplify it. You really want to engage with your audience. So you can ask, honest question. How would this change your practice? What do you do in practice? What are the barriers you find in applying certain guidelines? And this becomes more of a collaboration, engagement, interaction, where people are learning from you as the author, but also you're learning from them. And that typically amplify your manuscript in different ways. And sometimes you can find ways and people that you would like to collaborate on your next manuscript. So what I would say is that you did the work, amplify your work, because when you're doing that, you're actually helping other clinicians take care of their patients. And I think as a bonus on social media, you're also bringing that message to the patients also who are on social media and finding misinformation and educating patients. So it really helps you fulfill, the academic mission of educating, teaching, and public service to our patients.
Amazing tips, all of those. Thank you so much. I I must agree with you, particularly about the use of a graphic or a figure included, and people seem to really retweet, for example, on X, those particularly. We get a lot of more engagement with FG when there's a picture included. So thank you so much, Aline, for that. That's a really fantastic insight, and hopefully useful tips for our listeners. So thank you for that. Thank you to Aline for answering her question. So now I'm going to get onto the live questions, and I'm going to invite Beatriz to join on stage. Hi, Beatriz. Good
Hi.
evening.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, I can. Thank you for joining us from Spain. I hope the weather's better in Spain than it is in England at the moment. I'm sure it is. So I wanted to ask you, because I think you're brilliant at this, as well as many other things, about how do you spot the next big thing to publish in, and even as you've done then to promote and market it successfully. I'm thinking about your amazing IBD website that you've set up and launched particularly.
Well, so there are a number of things that you can do, and perhaps one can be better for you depending on your personality and the timing you have. The first one is, as Aline was highlighting, is to join social media. So through social media, you can follow different journals and you can see what they are posting every day because it's quite active. And also you can follow researchers or other clinicians that you really admire on the topics that you work, or others perhaps that are not the topics that you work at. For example, I follow a number of statisticians, and I'm not a statistician, but sometimes they share things that are interesting to me for learning. And one other thing that I normally do is at congresses, I post everything that I see at congresses. So I post every slide. I take pictures of many posters because these are ideas that can help me at sometimes, like, oh, I will use this figure because I saw someone else was doing something similar and it fits. And also it can help you collaborate. It's quite often happening that you go to a congress, you have your poster on any topic, and then someone sends you an email saying, see, I'm doing the same study than you, but in my own hospital. Can we join forces? So it's something that you can do. So I go to the congresses with a very open mind. I love the inspiring area that it's in there, and because it's a lot of science, it's very inspiring in a way. There are other ways of seeing what is very relevant at the moment. And I also see the point of Jonathan Segal saying that perhaps you don't want to talk about what everyone's talking, but to give a different angle of the situation. And I discovered recently an AI tool, which is called Connected Papers. So you can post, let's say, a Nature paper, you add the DOI code, and then it says on how many papers this has been cited, and you can join all of them. It gives you like a web map, and it's very visual, so you can see how many times this paper has been cited and who is using this citation. So it gives you an idea on how relevant some things are, so to give a context. And it's very useful also to write up introductions, because you can go through all of these papers, clicking them up and seeing what they are doing. So that's so as to say, for the inspiration. I also see the point that some people, talking about myself in Spain, in some centers, we don't have the resources that there may be in others, for example, in the UK or in other places. And this should not be a limitation. I mean, we can do research with other centers. We can write people to collaborate, to write reviews, systematic reviews, meta-analysis, whatever. You don't really need an infrastructure to do anything if you want to do anything. Also, if we talk about how promoting this, Aline was saying that you can do things on social media, and then you promote your own study and you publish it with a link so people can interact. And the most important thing of social media is how much we learn. I cannot tell you how many things I learn per day, because it's a big amount. I post and then I ask people, what do you think? And it's a very interesting discussion where you perhaps change your mind on something that you were doing that was not the best clinical care or whatever. So it's very interesting to join social media and to see what people are saying in there and how do they approach different outcomes that they are coming or different problems that may come and so on. And also, I think there is an important thing here, Phil, that is that we do science also for our personal career, but for patients as well. We need to translate science to patients. So that's what I do normally on Instagram. I try to distillate and communicate the data in a not so scientific manner, so patients understand first that there is a lot of research being done. Second, that we are really interested on their opinion on these studies. And third, that science is for everyone. Even if they are not doctors, science is for them as well. On Twitter, perhaps it's a little bit more a scientific tone, but you can make it adaptable to what you want. So it may vary. So all in all, that would be the thing. So you can find inspiration on anything. So for my website exclusively, for example, I'm subscribed, as I said, to all the things that come from the big journals, Gastroenterology, New England, and so. And also I use a filter on PubMed. So anything that is published under inflammatory bowel disease, Crohn's disease, or ulcerative colitis comes to me every week. It's a lot of data, a lot of studies that are published every week, like hundreds of them. But then I go through them, I read the titles, and I check the ones that I prefer. So it's a way of being updated, if it can work.
Yeah, well, you've definitely mastered all of those things, Beatriz. I must say your X account and your Instagram account are absolutely amazing, especially around conference time. So thank you for your amazing insight. What's that website again that you mentioned that connects papers?
Connected Papers, exactly.
Connected Papers. Okay, that definitely sounds like something worth looking up. So thank you very much, Beatriz. We'll move on, but stay online and join us at the end, okay?
Perfect.
Thank you. So we're now going to introduce Louise China, who many of you, certainly in the UK, but globally will recognize in terms of a publication related to that was published in the New England Journal of Medicine, I think last year or the year before. Hi, Louise. Good evening.
Hi, Phil. How are you doing?
Very, very authentic in your scrubs there. I'm very impressed.
I was going to get into my Christmas jumper, but it's too hot. So that'll be the change in a minute.
Okay. Well, so my question to you is, how do you get published in high impact journals, especially if you're not necessarily like yourself able to get published in the New England Journal of Medicine, which I must say was a mightily impressive feat, and well done to you for that. But what's your advice of really making the most out of your publication and really how to produce a great publication overall?
Great. I'll try and be short and sweet. So I would say, coming at it from a stance that you've already got your results, you're writing up, and you want to get it published. Number one, get the right title, make it succinct, and say what it is. Don't over conclude. Make it clear. Detail the outcome, the population, and the impact, and avoid over specification. So that's number one. So have a good title because it will catch interest. Number two, as a researcher, you're in search of the truth. So as long as you've got a good designed study, it doesn't have to be a positive study. So don't over conclude and search for things that aren't there. I think that's quite irritating when you're reading papers. So if your studies and your outcomes are negative, that's absolutely fine. Just that's what you've shown. That's a good contribution to the literature. If it was a good question, have a robust design. If it's a clinical trial, publish your protocol before, because that immediately says to the editor when it lands on their desk that this is robust, it's transparent, this group were asking these questions and these are the answers. Jonathan already spoke about diagrams and pictures, and I think absolutely looking at, I mean, if you can add something in when you're submitting your paper to start off with, this makes it clear to people as soon as they pick it up, and they don't have to pick through the methods in detail. It's clear what the question is. I think try and, if you've got an idea, when you're, say you've written up your outcomes as an abstract and you're going to a conference and you're thinking, oh, I think it would be good for this journal, look up who the journal editorial team are in the area and contact them before the conference and say, I'm going to write this up as a paper after the conference. Can you come to me? I'm going to post a number, whatever, on this day. I'd love to talk to you about my work. And when your work then lands in the journal editor's inbox or the associate editor, you will have a good idea and you would have written it for them after that discussion. I think that's a good foot in the door and good on both sides as well. And before you submit, get a non-expert to read your paper. So you have developed an expertise in your area, but the person on the other end hasn't necessarily. So get someone that is. So I share an office with 2 gastroenterologists. It's great to get them to have a. If they understood my next piece of hepatology work, that's great. It's got clear messaging, and when it lands in Phil's inbox, it's a gastroenterologist, and he understands what on earth's going on, then I've done a good job. So I think those are a few key messages on how to produce a great publication, and maybe some top tips.
Yeah, I really, really like some of those tips, Louise. I like the about potentially meeting up at a conference. That's a great idea, and I also like the kind of almost lay term of getting a gastroenterologist to read hepatology work. I'm sure there's a bit of mischief going on there somewhere as well, though. No, that's brilliant advice. Thank you, Louise. We're going to move on, but stay online until the very end, please. Thank you again. And so I'm finally going to introduce Chris Black, who is not only a very talented musician, but he's published many high impact papers and is our lead for neurogastroenterology. Chris, thank you for staying patiently online for so long. I've got a question related to mentoring, really, which we haven't discussed yet. You've published many high impact papers in the Lancet, Lancet GastroHep, and so on. There's too many to mention, really. But you work as part of a prolific Leeds publishing team, which looks like it's a fairly crucial thing. How do you choose a great mentored team, and how has your experiences now impacted on the way that you support and mentor others?
Thanks, Phil, and thanks for inviting me to participate. I mean, yeah, obviously, you're very generous in your comments about what I've done, but I'm completely indebted to the fact that I've been the beneficiary of really excellent supervision in my own research period and ongoing mentoring. And that's, I suppose, what gives you the foundation and the confidence and the skills to sort of pursue research. And so, when you're thinking about doing research, and a lot of what we talked about tonight is the fact that those skills can seem a bit daunting, whether it's publishing and writing up or doing the research in the first place. Obviously, you can think about the area of interest, the topic. You can look at the output of the team and think about their success or the setting that you want to work in. But really, I do think that mentorship and supervision is absolutely key, because that relationship is potentially one that's very long lasting, sometimes longer lasting than some of the clinical relationships that we form when we're rotating. And so, the sense of teamwork and working really well with people and forming those really effective relationships is important. And you want it to be more than transactional. So of course, if you're joining a research team, you're there to do some work that benefits everybody, but you want your supervisor to be interested in you, as an individual, and want to help you to develop your own career, and maybe sees part of their role and part of the metrics of their success as the ability to kind of promote people and take them forward and take some joy, I suppose, in helping with people's career development. And so, what I always say to trainees or others who want to do research with us or with other groups is, go and talk to the people who've just been doing that at the coalface and ask them what was it like. They're more likely to give you a kind of warts and all description, and they'll tell you what the supervisors were like to work with and what that relationship was like. And go and talk to supervisors. research orientated people and academics are all too happy to talk about their own research to anyone who will listen. So, you know, go and sort of talk to them about that. Because, you know, it's a personality thing, it's an interest thing, you need a good fit. And it's fine to say, you know, I've thought about it and actually I'm going to do something with someone else or whatever, because I think that would be a better fit. And no supervisor should be offended by that, because you want to work with somebody who's going to be the right fit for your team and for your work. And so I suppose as a supervisor myself now, I kind of take that pay it forward view. You know, as I said, I've been the beneficiary of what I think is great supervision, ongoing mentorship, being part of a great team. So I try to make the experience for all of our trainees, whether they're doing, you know, a 3-year PhD with us, or they want to find a fulfilling research project to do whilst they're rotating with us in the department. You know, I try to make that experience a positive one, be visible, be supportive, be available. You know, we're hugely involved in the nitty-gritty of the work that they're doing, the writing of the paper, all of that, because all of those aspects are what makes research challenging but also fun. And having, you know, people on board and new people in the team and seeing them and where they end up in the future is for me a really satisfying part and a really nice aspect of the job that I do.
I must say, Chris, the setup with you and your colleagues in Leeds sounds absolutely fantastic, and what research should be about. I think that's a huge credit to you all. So thank you for that, and hopefully it gives people listening, if they're potentially wanting to do research or considering it, food for thought, because I think having a good mentor and supervisor is absolutely crucial. So thank you so much, Chris, for that frank and honest answer. Thanks. Could I get the rest of the team to rejoin on stage? I'm conscious of the fact I've run slightly over. My apologies for that. I know it's getting fairly late in the evening. Perfect. Okay, I think we've got everybody. I just want to say, firstly, thank you to you all for your great questions, answering, and your presentations. Oliver, particularly thank you to you. You've been a great help. But I believe we've got Aditi now on the line, who you unfortunately are going to have to leave the stage to allow Aditi to come on. So if you could do a swap over, thank you very much, Oliver. I just wanted to use just a few moments to ask you guys, is there anything that you think that we've missed this evening, or that any other comments or that you'd like to add in at all related to what we've discussed?
I was just going to maybe say, Phil, about peer review that Keith spoke on so well. You know, it is a fun thing to do. I know we can be short on time, but it is a really valuable role. And I don't think you necessarily need 4 hours to do a peer review. I think you know, I don't want people to be put off by that, because, you know, the kind of publishing world and the academic world relies on people being available and willing to do peer review. It's a really, really important job. But I think if you come with the enthusiasm for the topic, you can learn a lot yourself, you can give a lot back, and authors really appreciate people taking the time to do peer review. So don't be daunted by it. As Keith says, it can feel like that at first. You can get that imposter syndrome, as he was saying, but actually I've learned loads from doing peer review and involving some of our fellows and trainees in doing peer review. And it's nice to be kind of part of that infrastructure that makes the wheels of academia go round. And we wouldn't get anything published, any of us, without the contribution of peer reviewers who, as we've said, can sometimes feel a little bit unacknowledged, but all of us editors recognise how grateful we are to those who agree to peer review for us, because we can't do anything without those people.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Chris. I completely agree, and I think Keith's talk was superb in explaining that as well. So thank you. Any other very last comments? I know Louise is waiting to go out on a Christmas party very soon, so I won't keep Louise for too much longer. Well, okay, we'll move on. I just want to say, because she's arrived back from a Christmas nativity, I want to say a big thank you to Aditi Kumar, one of our deputy editors. Hello, Aditi. I hope the show went well, and thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for all your efforts with the webinar as well, Aditi.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't make it. It was her last play that she was going to be in, so I couldn't miss it. But
Okay, well,
it looks like it was a really good webinar. So
okay, well, thank you, Aditi. All right, well, I'll wrap up because I know we're slightly over time, and I don't want the BSG to go crazy at me. So I'm going to share some last few slides. So just to reiterate again, we are looking for people to join the peer review team. Please do consider doing that and use this QR code. There's also a link on the BSG website. And most importantly, happy festive season ahead. Merry Christmas and New Year for all those that celebrate that, of course. And do follow us on social media. We're on X, Facebook, YouTube, and now LinkedIn. And hopefully, I think Beatriz has convinced us we'll be on Instagram very soon as well. And I'm going to use Beatriz's knowledge of that to hopefully launch that. So I'm putting you on the spot there, of course. But thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. And have a good evening. And thank you to the team. Thank you to the BSG. Thank you to Rosie for helping us in the background. And most importantly, thank you all for listening. Good night.
Good night.